Can we have more smoke, please? What was that?
Oh,
What was that?
nearly took out the whole table. The lights are here, so we can't really see whether there's anyone in the audience. Is there anyone?
Is there anybody here? I guess that's a yes.
That was all right. That was pretty good.
There we go. There's a couple people.
Yeah, okay, a couple out there. So we've got a massive PowerPoint today, so we're going to go pretty quick and get right into it. We're going to be talking today a lot about Diablo III Heroes, Monsters, and we're going to tell you a lot about our newest class, the Monk. So I'm going to see if I can work this thing. Your presenters today are Leonard Boyarsky, our lead world designer, also the lore dude, as he's known on the team. Wai Ching, who's our technical game designer. We call him the dude with skills because he works on a lot of player skills and monster skills. Julian Love, our lead technical artist. Anything that explodes in the game, at least partially his fault. And I'm Jay Wilson. I'm the game director of Diablo III and your mad overseer for the day. All right, so if you were at the opening today, you saw that we announced the Monk, and we're going to tell you a little bit about him. The first thing you might be wondering is, why did we choose Monk as our next class? So there's a lot of good reasons, you know, beyond just we threw a bunch of names in a hat. He was really inspired by pen and paper role-playing games. A lot of our characters and classes that we've been wanting to do really harken back to kind of the golden age of pen and paper role-playing games, and there were so many cool, kind of unusual classes that you don't typically see in a lot of action RPGs, so we really wanted to do and explore characters like that. So we really liked the idea of a character who was really fast, was melee-oriented, but it was also fragile. That's a really interesting contradiction that we thought would make for good gameplay. He's a good contrast from the Barbarian. We knew we wanted another melee class, and we really wanted somebody who felt like the polar opposite of the Barbarian. So we love fighting games on the Diablo III team. Do we have any fighting game fans out there? Yeah. So we absolutely love them. We have all kinds of tourneys on the team, and we really wanted a character that felt like a fighting game character. And our last reason was we really liked the idea of doing something different, something that wasn't necessarily an expected class. So the Monk's Kit. Kit is what we refer to as, this is what drives the character, this is what we refer to when we ask, what does this guy do? So the first one is we really wanted him to feel like a fighting game. So we wanted him to do probably some kind of combo moves, definitely a lot of martial arts. Holy magic. We wanted a character, again, who's a contrast from the Barbarian, who could use magic, and because it was a monk, we figured Holy was a great choice. We wanted a character who focused on speed over toughness, so we wanted a guy who was basically, you know, could get in and mix it up, but his main kind of tactic was either a hit-and-run tactic or a, you know, I'm gonna nail you, I'm gonna walk away, and you're gonna die while I'm, you know, wandering on to the next monster. We wanted skills that were really complementary. This is something we try to do with every class, but with him, what we really wanted was, with our combo moves, we wanted them to be able to blend into one another, such that there was a lot of depth in how he combined his moves together. And we'll get into that in a minute. And we didn't mind creating a character who, at the very beginning of the game, would be a little bit more challenging to play. Because of his combo moves and kind of the fact that he's a little bit fragile, kind of early on we know he's a little bit harder class, but that's okay. In the long run, everybody kind of evens out, and he's really there for players who want a character like that.
And once we've decided that we want to do a character like the Monk, we decide what his background's going to be, what his story's going to be. You know, what we decided with the Monk is the kit. What we call the kit is what makes a monk or a character class definitively that class, the way he dresses, his skills, everything about him. So why did we choose this monk kit? Well, we wanted to do something that was different. You know, we'd seen the Asian Kung Fu style monk before, so we wanted to do something that combined an Eastern Orthodox type Eastern European kind of feel with the Asian archetype, not only from a look standpoint, but also with their philosophies, the kind of mixing of their religions. And also it was really fun to go into our artists and say, you know, give me something that looks like a cross between an Asian monk and an Eastern Orthodox European monk from the 13th century, and watch them go crazy. These guys are the holy warriors of the game. They are from an area called Ivgorod actually. That is in the foothills on the edge of the Sharvald Wilds, for those who care about such things. They are raised in secluded monasteries from early in childhood to be pure reflections of their deities by perfection of a myriad of fighting techniques. To prove their dedication, they are tattooed on their back with very intricate tattoos of their 1001 gods. This tattoo takes their entire life to complete. As you can imagine, their very structured theocracy or theocratic religion is very different from somebody like the witch doctor or the barbarian. So this makes a very different interesting kind of contrast between the two characters, so there's something we can play with there within the story, within the game, quests and stuff like that. As far as their society, they report to what is known as the patriarchs, who are the philosopher kings or the priest kings of their society. Like I said, they are the holy warriors. They do what some might consider the dirty work of the church, but they don't see it that way. They view everything they do as sanctified. They spend their time when they're not fighting or practicing fighting in intense meditation to cleanse themselves of all sins. The world, they're known throughout the world, and their citizens in the rest of the world fear them and respect them in equal amounts, because they're killing machines, but at the same time they are very holy men.
So Jay told you that one of our goals was to make a character that had a fighting game feel, someone that emphasized speed over toughness. So one of the questions we had was, how do those aesthetic goals translate into actual skills? One of the things we knew we wanted to do was have a combo system. Other combo systems, it's definitely something that is familiar and reminiscent of some fighting games. Combo systems have also been seen in both Diablo II and World of Warcraft. So one of the goals for us is to say, okay, well, if we're going to do a combo system, how do we create a combo system that fits really well for a game like Diablo III? If you take a look at the assassin from Diablo II, her combo system, what we really liked is it emphasized two mouse button play. You know, you put one skill on the left, one skill on the right. It's great. Unfortunately, one of the things we found is a lot of times you'd build up a bunch of combo energy or combo orbs, and then there'd be nothing around to kill. So it felt very anticlimactic in that respect. Or sometimes it'd be hard to manage exactly how the combo came out, or people weren't mixing and matching. In the World of Warcraft Rogue example, we liked that players combine different skills a lot to kind of sequence their combos in a lot of different ways, and we really liked that part. But it also, two issues was sometimes players in World of Warcraft have a lot more skills than fit on just a left and right mouse button plus a hotbar. And more importantly, it's hard for me to imagine building up 5 combo points on a target in a game where everything dies in one hit. So we had to do some iteration there as well. The first skill that we have to show you today is Way of the 100 Fists. This came from the aesthetic goal of feels like a brawler, feels like a fighting game. This skill, basically in the video that you're seeing, the player is actually hitting the same mouse button 3 times in a row. It's Way of the 100 Fists, but every time you use the skill, a different move comes out. So the first time's a dash, and then you click the same skill again, multiple strikes come out hitting enemies, and then you click the same skill again, and it's an AoE. And so you can kind of see how this is a new thing for the Diablo license to have a combo system that feels a little bit more like a console brawler. The next skill I want to show you today is called Crippling Wave. This came from the aesthetic goal of, speed over toughness. And so we didn't want to make the monk just harder, more health or more armor, but we knew that they needed to have some defenses. So instead we focused on debuffing the enemies. So here we have an attack that slows your enemies on the first hit, applies a damage debuff on them on the second hit, and then refreshes the duration on both on the third hit, as well as doing a little extra damage. And so here you can really kind of see how our aesthetic goals are translating into gameplay. The third skill we have comes from the fantasy that came around when we went around the team and said, what kind of a skill would you love to see on a monk? What came up over and over is this notion of internal damage, organ damage, the exploding heart, those kind of things. And people really said, I want a skill that does that. So to balance out the third hit, we make the first and second hit are actually fairly average. It's 2 hits. In some ways, it could be seen as the cost of the skill. And then when you get to the third hit, you're hitting the mouse button for the third time, you place a dot bleed on the target. And if the target dies while that bleed is on them, they explode, dealing damage proportional to their maximum health to everybody near them. It's pretty cool. But now let's talk about the combo system. To combine these together, we decided that players would be able to use skills from any of the 3 stages and mix and match them. So that's how we can hopefully have room for both beginners to the game and veterans, where a beginner might just want to spam one skill over and over, and that's fine. Veterans can combine moves. Maybe they open up with the dash component of We Have 100 Fists, and then they click Crippling Wave. Well, you're already on stage 2, so you're going to get the attack debuff. And then on stage 3, you move through Exploding Palm, you're going to place the dot on them.
So we've got a pretty good background now, where the monk comes from, what he's all about kit-wise, and we've got some information about how he's going to play, and we've looked at a few of his skills. But to really finish him off, we're gonna need some special effects. We're gonna need some graphics. So I want to first give you a walkthrough of how we came about developing this monk's style kit. So the first thing is we wanted to get that feeling of martial arts action onto the screen. And so that means we, as effects artists, need to work really closely with the animators. They're the people that make things move. They're the guys that are really in tune with this stuff. So they're supplying us with a lot of animated actions that we take and then just sort of punch up. So the next ingredient in our kit is going to be, we wanted to get that holy vibe across. And the best way we felt that we could get that going would be to concentrate on the color palette for all of his skills, aiming solidly for things that are really golden and silvery, and that would evoke a holy vibe. So the last thing is we really wanted to get across this idea that monks are kind of smart. They're learned. They spent a lot of time in monasteries before they're sort of going to walk the earth, and the best way we could think to kind of get that vibe across was to give them some runes and sprinkle that throughout what they do. We feel that a monk would have an appreciation for art and form, and that this would really exemplify that. So now what I'd like to do is show you how we take those basic ingredients and use them to build one of the monk's signature skills that we call Seven-Sided Strike. Now, this skill idea has actually been around on the team for a very, very long time, before there was a monk. It was really a skill waiting for the right hero to come along and take it. But the general idea for how this skill works is that it's a lot like Chain Lightning from Diablo II, with one difference, and that is you are the lightning. So what we want to do is go back to that original skill and kind of gather up the essence and move forward from there. So the way we did that is we started with just some nice stances and poses that we could get from the animators, and we just get some basic action on screen that we can iterate with. And then the next thing is, we talked about that holy color palette. We're going to mix that in and punch up the way he looks and make him really bright and flashy. There was a time when we thought that this skill would be done in a shadowy kind of look, but when we really, that wasn't going to really support the idea of holiness. So we switched to this brighter, louder kind of take. So the next thing is, we had that stuff working, but the impacts really lacked something. You'd see the guy running into monsters, and he didn't really feel like much was going on. So we add some explosions, impact. Explosions make everything better. So the next thing is, we were like, well, we've got most of what we want, but you know, we talked about that 2D fighter feel. We thought, well, how can art kind of get that across on screen? You know, it's not just about the design of it, but so we thought, well, what if we get something that's kind of almost 2D and stick it in there and sort of marry that up with the impacts to really spell that out. And the last little thing that we threw in was the rune. So the point of the rune is to sort of pull it all together, get a little taste of that other vibe we were shooting for, but also to sort of frame an area on which the action takes place. So we haven't just been working on the monk. We've also been working on some upgrades to the other heroes, so sort of a makeover, if you will, to a number of skills. So I'm going to walk you through a number of those makeovers that we've worked on. So first up is Witch Doctor's Spider Totem, which we showed at last year's Blizzcon. And it was pretty cool, but the thing is, we felt that the look of it was just a little bit too noisy. You laid it down, and in the middle of combat, it's just buzzy, and you can't really figure out what's going on. And the other thing about it was we weren't too crazy about the totem thematic. We didn't feel that that really was really driving the Witch Doctor dark theme home. So we made some changes to it. We've renamed it Carrion Spiders. And the other thing is we decided, well, if a lot of little spiders is cool but can't read really well, then we'll switch that around and we'll make it fewer spiders, but we'll make them huge. And huge spiders are definitely creepy. And then instead of a totem, we decided to aim squarely for the zombie thematic and have those spiders actually get emitted from a zombie corpse that you raise from the floor. Next up in the makeover department is the wizard. So last year we showed you Stone Skin, which is a defensive ability. This worked really well, but it was really difficult to read. She's a kind of a spindly shaped character, and there wasn't enough surface area to really get the idea what she was made out of when she switched. So the other big problem with it, though, the one that the artist really had, was it didn't really underscore our goal of making the wizard a light show. So here we have the new Stone Skin look. And we aim for a bright crystalline kind of feel, something that would glow and light up, and something that you just couldn't possibly miss. So it's got a much easier read, and now that we've seen it like this and we like it, we're thinking it's probably going to need a new name, which we haven't thought of yet. So under the Barbarian, done a lot of upgrades to Whirlwind along the way. That's a good screensaver. So we showed you Whirlwind originally at WWI in Paris when we announced, and this is what it looked like. And we thought we were pretty happy with it at that time. We thought, okay, that looks like a whirlwind. It's cool, you know. But then what happened along the way this year was we started working on a new monster called the Dune Dervish, which is a desert monster, and he also has a different kind of whirlwind attack, but a whirlwind attack nonetheless. And it looks like this. And the problem that we had with this was when we unleashed this onto the team, the comment that was made was, how come the Dune Dervish whirlwind is better than the Barbarian? And this kind of thing happens a lot, where one thing comes into the game and kind of one-ups the thing that we just made. So we were like, the effects artists were, a little hurt by that, and we went back to the drawing board and we decided, well, all right, it's a fair comment. Let's do something about this. And so here's the new version of Whirlwind. It's a lot thicker. There's a lot more going on. We've added actually more copies of the Barbarian in there, lots of different flying weapons, and a whole lot of more dust. So now, that may not be impressive enough, so I prepared a little demonstration to prove just how much more powerful the new Whirlwind actually is. So yes, you can decimate farm animals with it.
All right, so there's your cow level. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other system design we've done on some of the other heroes. And the first thing is Fury, which is the resource system that we use for the Barbarian. Resource system is what we refer to pretty much anything like mana or Fury that fuels and changes up the gameplay for different classes. And one of our goals on Diablo III is to try to do a unique system for each class. And we may not accomplish that. We may default back to mana for some. But definitely at least one class will use mana, but hopefully all the others use something different. So we showed Fury last year, but we weren't quite happy with it. So the idea was, with the Barbarian, we really wanted him to feel like he was building up, like he was getting angry and going berserk. You know, I'm a big fan of the Hulk, so I wanted him to Hulk out. So the first thing we tried was very similar to Rage in World of Warcraft on the Warrior, where any kind of damage he did would just build up this resource that he'd use to spend on his skills. And the problem was we didn't initially like this because it felt like we were always waiting around. Like we wanted to spam our skills. We wanted to, you know, throw out leap attacks and seismic slams like crazy. We didn't want to kind of have to hit a dude 10 times to finally be able to do something cool. So we tried something different, which was more of a damage increasing system, and the concept here kind of shows that idea when we really kind of filled it out, that the more fury you had, the more damage you did, but it didn't actually affect your skills at all. And it was all right. It was kind of, it's always cool to do more damage, but it didn't change the way the Barbarian played in any way. And that's really important. That the whole point of these systems is to make the classes play a little differently so that they're interesting. So when you re-roll a different class, it's not the exact same mechanics. So what we finally decided to do was go back to the idea of a resource system, but tune it for Diablo. We'd really been taking the wrong approach. We'd probably been tuning it more like World of Warcraft, and you know, our pace of gameplay is just way faster. So what we did was we had this idea of endless fury. And so this video hopefully will start up in a moment. And maybe not. So if this video was going, which would be totally awesome, it's filled with crazy explosions, the greatest video ever made, really, I promise you. You'd be seeing like the Barbarian can essentially just recycle his fury so fast that while he's hitting dudes with leap attacks or seismic slams and stuff like that, if he hits a lot of targets, he generates a lot of fury, and he can just instantly do another skill again. But if he wastes like a really big AoE skill on one dude, then he wastes a lot of his fury, and then he has to kind of start over a little bit. It's a really fast-paced system. It doesn't kind of get in the way of his fun and hold him back, but it does make him think about what he's going to hit and what skill he's going to use on what type of monsters. And that makes it a lot more fun to play him. So the next thing we're going to talk a little bit about is runes. We showed runes last year, and for those of you who maybe didn't see or read an article about it, the idea for runes was that they're these items you find in the world, you socket them in your skills and change what your skill does. So you could say take something like lightning and turn it into chain lightning, or set it up so that when you kill guys with it, they explode in giant lightning, crazy light show. That's awesome. So if any of you have played the demo, you've probably noticed there's no runes in it. So the question is, where are they? So what we wanted to say was, we wanted to talk about them a little bit, tell you runes aren't going anywhere. They're a really important system to us. One of our main goals for Diablo III is an extremely high level of customization for your characters, and runes are one of our core systems that we decided to make because we really wanted to support that goal. So they aren't going anywhere, but I'm going to explain to you why they're not in our build. So this is our skill and rune creation process. I'm going to fly through it because it's, you know, boring production stuff. So we have a skill idea, could come from anywhere. We design the skill, you know, usually write some kind of, you know, awesome design doc filled with crazy words. We storyboard it. We don't do this for every skill, but signature skills, we'll create some imagery that supports it and says this is what the skill's supposed to look like. Then we program it. Then design tests the kind of early programmed version, which doesn't have final art, decides, is this cool? We do a lot of tuning and testing and changes and things like that. Then we add effects. Then we design runes, once we've actually gotten the skill through this whole process. After we design the runes, we program them, then we do the effects for them. If any of these kind of first 6 items on here change at all, and those of you who know Blizzard games know we like to change stuff all the time, then all of our rune work is gone. So what when we're developing skills, what we try to do is save all the rune work for last. We've blocked off a ginormous amount of time for it, so we're definitely going to be doing them. And there's actually a lot of runes in the game right now, but they're so hit or miss within the characters, it's kind of disorienting. Why does this skill have a rune and this one doesn't? So we just decided to disable them as a whole until people could play the system in its entirety. So now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the monsters that we developed in the last year and for our Blizzcon demo. This is just kind of a nice, cool little montage that shows off some of the different creatures that you'll encounter if you go and play what we're showing today. So I'm going to talk about our monster design philosophy and how we design monsters for Diablo. So the first thing that we kind of learned in the development of Diablo monsters is that they work best when they're simple. Most of our monsters live for 3, maybe 5 seconds. And when you put kind of crazy group behavior AI or squad level stuff or give a guy 5 skills, likely the player's only going to see a piece of that before the creature dies. And it actually just makes the creature look kind of confused and weird. It doesn't really work. So the monsters actually tend to work best when we make them kind of straightforward and simple, give them one job and have them do that job well. So the question is, how do we create combat that's got a lot of depth out of just these very simple monsters? And the answer is complexity and depth comes from combining different monster types together. And this is really the philosophy that all the Diablo games have followed and that we've just kind of taken up and inherited from our previous titles. So one of the key things here is this means we put a lot of different monsters on screen. We put 3, 4, 5 different monster types on screen at once. And sometimes knowing which monster is which and which one you want to kill first is really critical gameplay. We call it target identification. It's absolutely essential. So identifying monsters quickly is very important. And then we have this idea that you should always be introducing new monsters. Diablo monsters work best when they're simple. That means that if you fight the same monster over and over again for a couple hours, he can get a little dull. So always be introducing something new that is interesting for the player. So this is a good example of harking back to Diablo 2, how they use shape and color for target identification. Diablo 2 did, and the original Diablo did an amazing job of creating a lot of different profiles. And every area you go into, the monsters in those areas have different shapes and different colors that are very complementary to one another. And then here's some examples of some creatures from Diablo 3 that appear in the same area and how we use the same ideas of shape, profile, and color so that you can easily identify them from one another. All right. So I'm going to go really quickly through some of our archetypes, because the next thing we do is we go for every area, we say, well, we need 4 or 5 monsters for this area, and we have probably about 100 monsters planned for the game as a whole. Don't quote me on that, but it's a rough number. And it's really important. So a lot of these monsters repeat function, even if they have different ideas or different abilities. And so we archetype those functions. So the first one we call is a swarmer. Fighting tons and tons of dudes that die really easy is super fun, and that's what these guys' jobs are. Most of them are melee characters, most of them are really weak, but they're also really good to provide kind of a health wall so that more interesting or more complex monsters can interact with them. Ranged creatures, which are kind of our stock most threatening thing we can put out there. I mean, certainly we can put a boss or something bigger, but ranged creatures, because they don't have to move towards you, they can all attack you at once, tend to be pretty dangerous. Lieutenants, which do things like resurrect enemies and buff them and spawn. These are typically not placed in high numbers, but they're put in to be kind of this high priority target that you want to go after. Elites are basically meant to make you kind of pause for a second and encounter something that takes more than a couple hits to kill, or maybe has a really high damage attack. They are kind of again a focus, like a target that has a very high priority to it. But unlike the lieutenant, they're often a little bit scarier. You have to, you can't just run straight into them every time. So an AoE character, or what we sometimes call area of denial characters, because a lot of their job is to change the play space. I'm going to set the ground on fire underneath you, and now you don't want to stand there anymore. So when the player has to kind of react like that, it's interesting gameplay. So weakeners are kind of like lieutenants in that they're high priority, but they also have the side effect of making swarmers and range guys even more threatening. So, and then we have a bunch of one-offs that are just kind of cool ideas we have. I'm not going to explain what all these are. I just thought you'd have fun debating the names on the forums, because we come up with a lot of crazy names. So, spreadsheet, yeah, because we really wanted this presentation to be exciting. So, spreadsheets are not just the tools of bean counters. If there's any kids in the audience, learn your math if you want to work in video games. It's important. So we use spreadsheets, this spreadsheet in particular, we call it the monster progression spreadsheet, and every one of these colored bars is a different area, and it just kind of shows how we plan our monsters from area to area. And when we do that, we look at shape, color, and archetypes, and we make sure that we have a good mix in each one, and that each one complements. And then as we move from area to area, we're also introducing new challenges and new monster types at a really good rate, and this is our tool to do that.
I'm going to walk you through the monster pipeline that we use. It's basically the process by which a monster gets into the game. The first step is to start with a concept, and the concept can really come from anywhere. It can come from somebody on the team who went on vacation to Hawaii and saw something interesting and had a monster idea visually. It could come from, someone played through the latest level environment and they said, this desert environment really is lacking in, a particular, a wasp. Or it could come from someone who just has a mechanical idea. This sketch comes from Carl Lavoie on our team, who said, "I really want a monster that will just leap off of walls. I don't care if it's what kind of monster it is. I just want it to leap off of the wall. I think that'd be a fun mechanic to play with." And so the initial idea comes from anyone on the team and from anywhere. Once we have that initial idea, we need to flesh it out. So we'll start with that initial concept and flesh out all the other details about what that monster might involve. All this is done on paper. It's very multidisciplinary to try and just flesh out and make sure everyone has a picture of where we're going. After we have that, we're going to do a very rough art pass on it. We don't want to spend too much time on the animations because maybe the abilities might change. We don't want to spend too much time on the look because we haven't seen it in the game yet. So this is just enough to get a prototype into the game as quickly as possible. The next step is to actually hook it up and give it some of its basic abilities. Again, this is a rough pass. The goal is to prototype the monster. Jay mentioned the archetypes. You've got your spawners and your swarmers and your range, and we're just trying to just get the rough brush strokes in to try and figure out whether or not this monster is going to be fun. We drop them into the level, and this is our first time that we actually get to see how the monster looks in the game. This is a very important step. This is where we might actually do a little bit of back and forth. This is a chance where we've had a chance to see how does the monster look, behave, and interact. How does it look against the environment? How does it behave with the creatures and with the player? And how does it interact with the groups that it's been spawned with? If we're happy with it at this point, then that's when we start looking at doing the more detailed polish. We're going to look at giving it new abilities. Maybe we like most of a monster, but we really want it to be able to burrow underground as well, and so we'll add that. Or maybe we want the rare version to be the ever so loved lightning enchanted variety, and so this is where we flesh out the details. And then finally, when we're happy with that, is the monster creation process is the final art. So now the animators can polish up the animation now that they know exactly how fast it's going to move. Or the artist can make the texture variants for the various difficulty levels for other versions of the monster later on.
All right, now that we've heard how we create monsters or the process we use, let's talk about specific monsters. The sand wasp is a natural creature. It's not demonic. We wanted to showcase it because it's interesting in that it kind of shows that the world of Sanctuary or the world of Diablo is a very dangerous place on its own. It doesn't need demons to kill you. plays a support role. This is a swarming creature, like Jay and Wyatt were talking about. This is a creature that is not very tough on its own. It's very much used in conjunction with other creatures. If you find this creature by itself, you just kill it. It's not really a problem, but when you get a bunch of them together, you get what we call the bullet hell effect, which is a slow-moving wall of damage or death. It's very hard to deal with. They're also very handy or very deadly when they're supporting any other creatures, you know, because they're just throwing these flying barbs at you while you're trying to fight some other melee creature or something. Do you want me to just control it, or? Yeah. And now Julian's going to talk about how he did the effects.
So yeah, we really wanted to support where design was coming from in terms of this bullet hell idea. So we started by, just with the rapid fire attack idea, we started with a whole lot of different kinds of projectiles. And none of them really kind of stuck for one reason or another. And then we got this idea, well, where does this skill really come from? And the other thing it's really trying to evoke is this old-timey arcade action idea. And so we hit on this idea, well, what if the sand wasp actually birthed other little mini wasps that flew at you? That would be really cool, and it would really support where we're coming from. And of course, we got that into the game, and the team didn't quite understand where we were coming from. So I was like, well, you know, how can we communicate, even to the rest of the team, exactly what we're trying to get across and why this is such a cool thing? So I came up with this. The best way to do this is with graphics. So I came up with this little demonstration, again, that says everything, I think. So here's your player, and you're going to get used to the controls first. You just need something to attack. There is a boss. And the boss is brutally hard.
All right, next we went to the Fallen family because you can't have Diablo without the Fallen. These are the classic Diablo demons. A little bit of background on them. They used to be these exalted demons that were Azmodan's right hand. Before the Dark Exile, which is when Mephisto, Baal, and Diablo were exiled to Sanctuary, they tried, Azmodan and Belial tried once before to do this, and the Fallen in their previous state were the instruments they used to try to get this thing done. When they failed, Diablo turned them into their present impish, comical state, and that's how they've existed since then. Now they're kind of freelance. They don't work for any particular demon. They're just kind of equal opportunity demons who work for everybody. One of the things that we really loved about them, and this is, once again, we're reinforcing that idea of the different creatures working together, is their family relationships. And the classic family relationship, of course, in the Fallen family is the shaman and the imp, which is not going to play for us, but you've all seen it. The shaman resurrects the imp and throws fireballs. We upgraded their look, obviously, but that's where we took as a starting point for this. You know, when you run in, the first thing, of course, you want to do is head straight for the shaman, or he's just going to keep, you know, resurrecting all the imps that you kill. So the next thing we did was have videos that don't work on any of these. Are they working over there? They're working on the screen. I don't know what to do with that. Well, we'll just continue forward. So we made the Fallen Overseer. He's basically a bigger version of the imp. He's stronger, but he has a battle cry. And what's interesting about this is when he appears with a group of fallen imps, he makes them braver. If you recall in Diablo II, the imps had a tendency to run away in fear when you killed one of them. When the Overseer shouts his battle cry, they get braver and they get tougher. They have less of a tendency to run away, and they're a little bit more difficult to kill. The Fallen Overseer himself is actually a little bit tough. He has this big wind-up and hit that does a lot of damage. So this was one new relationship, and I'm going to be really upset if this one doesn't play. I am going to cry now, because the Fallen Lunatic is awesome. He is the black sheep of the family, if you can imagine such a thing for demons. He's a living bomb. He runs at you and stabs himself in the stomach until he explodes. And if that sounds cool, you can imagine how it looks. I'm sure we'll put this up somewhere where you guys can see it. I apologize. But so anyways, it's really funny until you're surrounded by a group of fallen and low on health, and this guy comes running in and stabs himself and explodes and kills you. Over to the Dune Thresher.
All right, so we've shown you a lot of monsters that we think have turned out really well, and now I'm going to talk about one that we like but think could really be better, and we consider to be a work in progress. So we call him the Dune Thresher, internal name Sand Shark. Those of you who've seen the movie Tremors probably get the idea of this monster, or at least our original idea for him, which was, that if you haven't seen the movie, it's really cool. It's a horror movie where there's these bunch of crazy carnivorous giant worms that live under the desert, and if you stand on sand, they eat you, and if you stand on rock, they can't get to you. So we really liked this idea because we liked the notion that the desert sand would feel really dangerous to the player and not just something they just want to run willy-nilly out onto. But this guy was really kind of a prime example of the difficulty of a more complex idea in a game like Diablo. And we'll show you kind of what our desired result was. So as I mentioned, we wanted to get this feeling that the sand wasn't safe. We wanted to have the Dune Thresher submerge only when he was on sand. If he was on any other surface like road or rock, he could not submerge and he couldn't burrow under it. So when he's submerged, he would be completely invulnerable, but when he's above ground, that's when he's actually able to be attacked and you can hurt him. And then we were going to let him actually attack you from under the sand, which means he could attack you at a point when you couldn't hurt him, which again would make him, the idea was to really get the player to play more tactically, so that when they ran into this guy, they have to move over to kind of a rock outcrop or a road to try and get him to surface so they can attack him. So the actual result, which I'm going to guess won't play, there you go. At least it's predictable in its inconsistency. So players confused whenever the Dune Thresher was submerged. They just didn't see him. He had this cool fin that would stick out of the ground, but with all the effects and demons and all that crazy stuff going on, you just couldn't see it. So we tried to play up his attack when he was underground, but it just looked kind of silly. We had him diving kind of through, and it was very confusing, like, is he above ground now or is he not? And then once players kind of finally did figure out how he worked, they didn't play more tactically, they just ignored him. They were like, oh, well, I can just go to the next screen where there's 100 other monsters and I'll kill them instead and just ignore that dude. So it didn't actually work. So we have a fix, which was to make the Dune Thresher more of a hunter. And so again, to play up that idea of a shark. And so the idea was that when he's submerged, he moves really fast, and that this is his way to catch the player. So the Dune Thresher, when he's distant from you, he goes underground and he just starts making a beeline for you. And then he can't attack from underground anymore, but this solves the problem of if players couldn't see him, because now he jumps up above ground, he's totally vulnerable, and you can attack him back. So it's a pretty cool character. We're pretty happy with him, but he's especially against ranged characters, but we still have never gotten that dream that we originally had of having this character that interacted with the environment. So there's a chance that we'll come back to him. All right, so we've got a couple little bloopers for you. We have a lot of stuff as we go through development that kind of goes wrong and haywire, and we thought it'd be fun to show you a couple of those. This actually wasn't. This was for internal. When we showed, first time we showed these characters off to the company, we just wanted to make them laugh. So this is one of the quests. Varna has been poisoned. She's not doing very well. She's supposed to stop now, but she didn't. Even when she died, she didn't. Yeah, it wasn't good. Something wrong with her. we're not quite sure what this is. But we do recommend you stay away from it. So that brings us to the end of our presentation, and I think we have some time for some Q&A. Thank you.
All right. We don't have a lot of time for questions, so I just want to remind everybody that we have an hour-long Diablo III Q&A tomorrow at 11:30. But we have some time for questions. The first question.
I'm really excited about, there's an echo. Is this going to come out before CLISM?
We don't discuss release dates ever. When it's done.
Does it feel like it's going to come out?
We don't discuss release dates ever. When it's done.
Next question.
Hi, I'm an avid player of Diablo II, and one of my favorite classes was the Amazon. I'm just wondering if there was any chance that you guys be looking back at like the Amazon class or like the rogue from Diablo 1.
Well, we certainly look at all kind of the previous classes when considering the next ones, but we're going to have to keep that one a secret until next year. Sorry.
Next question.
Hi, I was just wondering, you didn't really go over crafted items too well last year, and this you didn't really discuss it in this specific one, and I was kind of really anxious. Do you have any plans to like extend the Horadric Cube crafting system?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are a couple things that we really liked about the Horadric Cube, and there's a couple things that we didn't like so much. I would say that what I really like is the ability for the players to have some control over their ability to take existing items and maybe get some new ones out. One of the things that we didn't like so much is the fact that all of the recipes were hidden, required people to go to a website to look things up. So although we definitely want to revisit the mechanic of taking existing items, we'll probably do it in a different way.
Next question.
Hey, what's up? Indeed, too, my favorite class is always the Barb. Is there going to be Singer Barbs in this game? Singer Barbs? War Shouts?
Like the Crybarians.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of support in the audience for a Crybarian out there? Yeah? Yeah, we'll consider it. We don't have anything like that. Well, he does have battle cries right now, and but he doesn't have any offensive battle cries. But I will definitely keep it in mind and consider it.
Next question.
Hey guys, love the game. I was wondering about weapons. If the monk, I was surprised you chose monk because you think of them as being unarmed. Are they going to be able to use swords? And it looks like he has a staff. But what are the plans for customization?
Yeah, when we first designed the monk, actually, we started with no weapons for exactly that reason. We're like, okay, let's look at this as a totally different kind of class. Let's see what we can do with no weapons. Obviously, you need weapons because you need the item game, you need to be able to upgrade and all that stuff. But we wanted to, approach it a little bit differently than we had in the past. But what we found was that it really didn't start hitting what we thought of as the monk until we gave him those weapons. Kind of like the assassin in D2, the monk is actually much more defined by his weapons than any other class. The assassin had her javelin, the crossbow. She was so much defined by that. The monk, he has right now, for instance, when he uses his staff, his skills use very sweeping motions. He has some fist weapons right now. He does very, jabby, quick motions. More than any other class, the weapons that he has in his hands are going to define a lot of the skills that he uses. So while this remains to be seen, but he might not have as big an array of weapons, but they'll have a bigger effect on different things he can do. So it's kind of a mix and match. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Did you want to add anything to that? Or?
Next question.
Hello. I like the game really much, and I have a question for you. A month or two back, there was a question if the game was going to be as dark and fantasy as the first one and the second one. Are we going to see that kind of dark style again within this game as an option or as an idea? Because there was a concept art. You know, it was really dark, and so I don't know if it was exceptional or not.
So when you say dark, do you mean like we turn all the lights off, or somber content?
Like it's in more terror, scary, like things popping out, in and out. You don't even expect it.
Well, we do feel like we're going in that direction. I mean, if you notice the monk announcement, the kind of whole section with the cult and them destroying a whole town, if you go and play the demo and you find that town, it's covered in bodies that have been sacrificed and some pretty dark stuff. So yeah, tone-wise, we intend to be just as dark as the previous games. In terms of the art style, we are looking for something more vibrant, but something that also still feels like a mature game. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
All right, we only have time for a couple more questions.
Hi, I got a question about the monk combo system. Can you cancel a combo like midway, like you just keep on dashing and not do any other skill?
The way it's currently set up, and this is under development, so we're constantly iterating on it, but we experimented with different times where basically the time between your first click and your second click, whether or not it changes. I think right now it's like 0.6 seconds. It was about the right length. So if you click and you dash and then you pause and let a second pass by and then you click, you will get the dash again. And so it's really just constantly clicking is what advances the sequence.
Next question.
Is boss farming still going to be like huge? Like you keep going kill and bail over and over again? And when I go fight people like Duriel, if I don't have any frost resistance, am I going to get dropped?
Never mind. Go ahead.
I'll
I'll stay away from that.
Let's see. So it's the frost resistant question is kind of a hard one to answer because we haven't gotten that far in boss design. I have a feeling we won't go that route where we force you into that specific an item set, but that's really going to come probably later in our development. But I will say that the farming of bosses. Bosses are where the best items are, so players are going to go and kill those bosses. The problem with Diablo 2's in-game was that there was a one-size-fits-all, one right answer almost all the time. Now that changed throughout the game's life, but pretty much there was always a run that either because it was fast or because of the quality of what came off the boss, it was the best run to do. So our goal will be to follow the model of some other games, and I actually look at World of Warcraft for this in their quest system, and diversify the way you play through in-game content, such that, yes, you'll still be doing runs, but you're not going to be doing the exact same run over and over and over again until your eyes bleed. So we do have plans for that. It's not something we can talk about yet, but we definitely are going to try and address that issue.